Hi, class. My name is Josh Broughton. I am a chaplain candidate with the Vermont National Guard, and I was excited to see the introduction of Free Burma Rangers in this class. I don't recall who first introduced the organization to me, but I watched the documentary a few years ago, and I highly, highly recommend it. The interesting connection that I shared was that Dave Eubank, the founder of the organization, served in 2nd Ranger Battalion in Washington State some 30 or 35 years prior to my service. That said, he had a much more incredible career than mine. He went on to serve in 1st Special Forces Group as a reconnaissance commander and on the Halo team of all things. And he got out and attended seminary. And he met his wife, Karen, who was equally incredible. She studied special education at Seattle Pacific, and they got married and essentially followed in Dave's parents' footsteps as missionaries. Dave's parents gave them a call from Thailand, I believe, and let them know what was going on in Burma and asked for their help. And they went over there, I believe, with, if I remember correctly, their 2 oldest daughters were already born, but their son was a baby in the documentary. They raised their kids in very austere environments right near the war. It's an incredible story. So I highly, highly recommend it. So that led me to research what's going on there. And I knew a good amount, but I did not know about this case, Gambia versus Myanmar, a case concerning genocide put before the ICJ in 2019. So some quick history of Myanmar, otherwise known as Burma, is that it was a colony for about a century before World War II. Afterwards, it gained its independence, but there was an almost immediate split between the civil government and military leaders. The leading general at the time staged a coup and created a one-party socialist state. For the decade or two afterwards, there were numerous bans on free speech, certain ethnic minorities serving in government, martial law, and house arrest for numerous opposition leaders. Most notably, see if I pronounce it correctly, Aung San Suu Kyi, who would later become president, but was again ousted and put under house arrest more recently. Religiously, it was primarily a Buddhist country, but it was composed of many Christians from missionary movements, as well as Muslims and various forms of animism. Demographically, the government recognizes 8 ethnic minorities. Again, see pronunciation. The Karenni, Kachin, Chin, Wa, Rohingya, Shan, Mon, Karen, and Rakhine. I think I got those right. So the more recent events of this surrounding this case is that in 2012, there were relatively free elections. They were still somewhat corrupt and there were concerns around them, but the UN suspended all non-military sanctions against the country for a year. And I just thought this was an interesting note and how we've considered the use of sanctions both before and after government reform. So this government reform under the NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi attempted many ceasefires between the rebel groups. However, arguably under their watch, this specific case occurred between 2016 and 17. I quote from one of my sources, the Rohingya militants attacked police posts in Rakhine, and the response by security forces essentially amounted to ethnic cleansing. There were over 1,000 people were killed, many detained, and both before and after this event, there are estimates of over 100,000 Rohingya being confined to detention camps. So the most current updates surrounding this case are that in February of 2021, the army staged another coup, and subsequent protests have unsurprisingly led to thousands more deaths and arrests. So the humanitarian rights concerns of this specific case, but at large, I put in 3 major categories. There's so much going on here, but for the sake of time, there is freedom of expression. There's an example of a code that criminalized comments or public comments of fear and false news. in which we see staggering numbers of 189 convicted, over 1,000 detained, 1,500 warrants, and to include almost 200 children. The health, education, and law concerns, according to the WHO, more than 286 attacks were conducted in and around healthcare facilities, which accounts for almost a third around the world. Almost 12 million children and young people, there was little to no access to education at various levels due to COVID and the conflict going on. And then the military courts have seen dozens of people, including children, subjected to the death sentence after what were perceived as unfair trials. So last but not least, there were civilian attacks and displacements. You would find this in many of the Free Burma Rangers field reports, countless military operations that have led to the burning of entire towns, concerns for torture, rape, and denial of humanitarian aid altogether. So again, this specific case sits in this history and all that's going on. And again, it was introduced by Gambia in 2019. And the number one question that I had, at least, was why Gambia? And the short answer that I could find is in bullet 3 here. And it states that while Myanmar had ratified the Genocide Convention, it made reservations to Articles 6 and 8. Unfortunately, I don't know all the details of the contents of those articles, but what's important is it did not make any reservations to Article 9 concerning genocide. So I quote from one of my sources: as a result, any contracting party to the convention that has not itself made a reservation to Article 9 may bring the case against Myanmar, that being Gambia. Gambia met the requirements of both being part of the Genocide Convention as well as not having made reservations against Article 9. And I just find this fascinating, the legal aspects that play here in countries bringing forth things against other countries in the ICJ. So the key request that Gambia made in this application is provisional measures to protect against further irreparable harm to the rights of Rohingya people groups under the Genocide Convention. What that looks like, again, based on my limited research and understanding, would essentially require Myanmar to be subject to UN investigations, to have to submit periodic reports, and essentially prove over time that they are protecting against further harm to the Rohingya people group. And the hope would be, I find this rather a landmark case. It seems pretty incredible to me. The hope would be that this would spread to all the ethnic minorities, that this would cause reform at many levels, to include places like Karenni, where Free Burma Rangers are working. So just finally, a few other opportunities that exist around this concern is that people groups like the Burmese Rohingya organization, I think it's a international Muslim organization, has filed cases or a case with the ICC against certain individuals. So we see that example of state versus state and individual concerns between the ICJ and ICC. And other states like the Republic of Maldives, I found, have filed an intervention in support of Gambia's application against Myanmar. And again, I don't know all the details of what an intervention entails and how much weight it bears, but I just found it really interesting trying to read and understand the legal aspects that surround which countries can or can't take these sort of actions within the UN and within certain conventions. And last but not least, there have been concerns addressed in other international forums by each country, the US included, in humanitarian aid organizations, increasing their support. And I wanted to remember to bring up that I found the US proposed, I don't know if it was an article or a provision or what the name of it is, unfortunately, due to my lack of understanding, but they made a proposition in the UN to the General Assembly, essentially, that asked Myanmar, that encouraged and essentially condemned what they were doing and asked them to cease all abuse and all attacks against ethnic minorities. And unfortunately, due to what we've seen with the 5Ps, China and Russia vetoed what was brought forth by the US. So that is the final interesting fact I have. I hope you enjoyed learning a bit about this. It is a difficult thing to consider. Here are all my sources. I gave a couple graphic warnings if you look at, in particular, the Free Burma Rangers items, to just be aware what you will see there. But I really enjoyed this. It was difficult to read, but also powerful, and I hope it was for you as well. So thank you.